If you hate requests for evidence or RFEs, this case got 5 of them. 5 RFEs in the span of 3 years, plus 2 interviews challenging this case. If you think your case is difficult, this case is difficult. Eventually it was approved, but let me tell you why it was so complicated and what we did. Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. I'm the managing partner here at Zhang Associates, where we solve legal problems with creative solutions. So the legal problem in this case, well, it's not just one legal problem. There's like 10, 15 legal problems with this case. Everything that can possibly go wrong went wrong. To start, this case wasn't prepared by us in the beginning. It was only transferred to us after the RFE, right? After the first request for evidence, it was prepared by another agency. They prepared it and it was years and years of battle. And then finally, they couldn't deal with it anymore, transferred to us. And then we had to deal with 5 RFEs because there's so many problems in this case. The original parent company in China, well, it closed down. The US company was supposed to be a clothing accessory company. Well, that closed down. And then it transferred over to a restaurant and that closed down. And then it became a logistics company. It was a mess. The executive that was supposed to be managing this entire operation had to end up drive an Uber in order to sustain the company and sustain the family, sustain himself. The officers at USCIS, as well as the officer interviewing, just did not understand how something like this could happen. And so they challenged everything. Prove to me that you were executive back at home. Prove to me that you were executive here in the US. What your company, are you a clothing company? Are you a taxi driving company? What are you doing? And how are you here driving Ubers now? And it's understandable for these USCIS officers, right? Without the interview, the USCIS officer was just reviewing the documents. And then the 45 officer is supposed to, again, just review the documents, but there were just so many questions left unanswered. How did this big name executive from a logistic company back home come to the US and go through this entire transition, landing to where he is now? And why does he still deserve a green card? Please explain that to me. Life happens. Okay, a little bit more, but that's essentially the key point. And we always started with that, right? So something happened with the executive company back in their home country. It shrunk down to just a few people. And so he was an executive back home and he was leading this great enterprise. He got transferred over, he was investing in this company, he fulfilled all the requirements, he filed for the EB1C. And so, yes, it was big, and yes, it shut down, but it's because they lost him. He was such a great guy. It lost him, the company had to shrink, they transferred everything over, but he still met all the requirements. He was an executive and he transferred over. That's almost the US's goal, isn't it? For EB1Cs to transfer all these head executives from all around the world to come to the US to transfer their talents, their resources, their company, their know-how, and that's what they want. And so yes, the company couldn't survive without him, but that's fulfilling the US's intent. It's not a requirement that the foreign company had to stay alive. So that's how we dealt with one of the first few RFEs. And then we had to deal with the clothing company shutting down. He is an executive, he is really good at managing companies, but he was excellent back in his home country. In the US, all these different things factored in. The logistics nightmare that happened with the clothing company and the shipping delay and the supply chain, he couldn't make it continue to survive. So he had to transform. And only a top-notch executive can go from a clothing company and transform it into a restaurant business. And he was able to successfully make that call, make that transition. All the funds were transferred. He established a new enterprise. How many people can do that within a very short amount of time? We're talking within like a few months here. He still met the requirements in the sense of having multiple employees with high salary, transitioning everything. It was a very difficult task. We got expert letters proving how difficult it is for a clothing company during this time. And then we made the transition. So eventually we got through that hurdle. Then the next RFE was challenging why the restaurant business shrunk. The original business plan was supposed to be for this big restaurant with all these executive chefs, but then it didn't happen according to their plan. And so they had to shrink in size and money was tight and he ended up having to drive an Uber. What the heck, right? I mean, at every single point, every single time the client ends up contacting us, explaining their circumstance, it's like, are you serious? Like, this wasn't part of the plan. This was how? Like, nobody does this, but they did it. And it's not up to us to just say, oh, well, then your case is going to be denied because that wasn't according to plan. We have to look at the situation and try to make the best argument. We sat down and really tried to understand what was going on in their mind, right? Because it wasn't just his decision, it was a whole team's decision as well as the parent company. Why did they move the finances in this way? Well, things weren't going well. They had to cut costs immediately. They're not just here burning cash, and so they had to adjust. And he had to go be an Uber driver on top of everything. Now, it was really, really complicated to explain that to an officer, because why is an executive being an Uber driver? I mean, we're talking about EB1C here. You're gonna get a green card for being an executive. If an L1A, like a miniature version of an executive manager, pulls something like this, I will almost guarantee the case is gonna be denied. Well, here's the explanation. His English is not that good. He's in the restaurant business, and every restaurant business knows that now it depends on the Instacarts, the Uber Eats, it depends on all of this. So he had to figure out exactly what's the best way to transform his company. He needed to learn English better for himself. He didn't have time to go to class, right? Take a language course. He just needs to know English. He needs to understand the business market in the restaurant business here and now. And of course, he needs finances to keep the company afloat. He needed to do what nobody else could do, and he needed to elevate his own game. This was the story. Is it convincing? I don't know, but it made sense. And we had to prepare this and explain to the 45 officers again and again and again. Again, there were 3 RFEs for the 45. We were prepared to go into the interview and to explain it twice. And each time the officer was puzzled, but it ended up making sense. They were not supposed to re-adjudicate the I-140 EB1C, so eventually everything was approved and their whole family finally got the green card. The takeaway for this story is that the craziest things happen. Business plans change, right? You went from a clothing company to a restaurant, to shutting down the restaurant, to shutting down the parent company, to the US company's executive becoming an Uber driver. But my advice to all practitioners is don't walk into the meeting with a preconceived notion and a prejudice that this case will necessarily get denied because of the officer's perspective. Yes, based on your experience, these are all the things that they're going to challenge the case. You, as the expert, need to bring that to the table. But wait and now listen to why they did what they did and see if you can understand and help them come up, zealously advocate for them the best argument and best explanation for their circumstance. It's not a guarantee that it will work, but you are not promising the best. You are only promising your best. So listen to them, help them understand, come up with an explanation, and like this case, it might be approved. It is the hardest case that we've ever done for all EB1C cases. It was just so bizarre in every single way. And you know what? I'm glad to share that with you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Take care. Bye-bye.